Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha. We are at the WTF Summit. We've had a great day full of panels and discussions, which we're really excited to get into. For now, I have an exclusive interview with Campbell Brown, the founder and CEO of Forum AI. Campbell, thanks for being on TITV.
Love being here. Thank you for having me.
So tell me, let's jump right into it. What is Forum AI and why launch it today?
So this is a startup that I've been quietly working on with a co-founder for about 8 months. We've just come out of stealth and are starting to tell our story. And this came out of, I think, me watching teenagers, I have 2 teenagers, use chatbots for, their primary source of information, and recognizing that the information they're getting is sometimes pretty bad. And there's a real need for, especially around complicated subjects, there's a real need for more depth, more clarity, more accuracy, obviously. And so we're focused on trying to do evaluations of the outputs of all the big models on high stakes topics. So think politics, conflict, geopolitics, and even mental health, which, if you have a teenager using these bots to ask mental health questions, the tone is really important in terms of getting it right. So we're first evaluating the outputs of the models, and we do that with AI that we've trained with a network of experts. And the experts are people who, range the spectrum of politics from right to left and everything in between. We've partnered with a lot of Washington think tanks like the Atlantic Council, Manhattan Institute. We partnered with Cleveland Clinic and Mount Sinai and the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI. So a lot of academics who can work with us too, who can evaluate what's missing. When you get an output, is there perspective missing? Is there context missing? And then when we find out what this needs in order to be a broader, more balanced perspective, we have experts in the network who can create content and provide some of those answers to really tough questions. So people like Fareed Zakaria and Neil Ferguson talking about geopolitical issues. They both strongly disagree, but they're both intellectually honest. And so, if they were to look at a piece of content, they might say, this needs it has my perspective, but it needs the other side here. And so it's a little bit like peer review.
Okay. Yeah. Walk me through that process a little bit more, because, when I think about that, I think, is there a future where you're going to have a little check mark at the bottom of answers saying approved by Forum AI? Is it more something that's going to be completely invisible, and before we see OpenAI or Anthropic or Perplexity announce their next product, you'll have been behind the scenes? How visibly does this show up?
So right now, we're very much behind the scenes, but that's a really interesting question, because you can see where this is kind of headed already in terms of the regulatory environment. The EU is sort of mandating, not sort of, they are mandating bias mitigation. There's lots of talk in Congress on Capitol Hill around how to address bias in the models. But it's not just bias. It's also just getting the right tone, the context, the broader picture. Everything is not left and right. And when that's often how it's presented. And I think especially really complicated issues coming from these models, it's a lot more nuanced than that. And what we want to try to do is bring this really diverse expert network into the process so they can bring some of that nuance to the answers.
Is there a certain sort of category of question that you feel like Forum AI specifically excels at, and, an area that you see yourselves needing to get better on, and you see it, being better in the future? I would love to sort of know the here and the future.
So we started with what we thought were going to be the most difficult.
Okay.
But it was also the area that I have the most experience in, which is politics and world affairs.
Okay.
Both that you look at all these data labeling companies that are very successful in Silicon Valley, they stay away from those issues because they're too controversial, and who wants to touch those? And even one of my investors even sort of jokingly said, why are you breaking into jail? Why do you want to do this? And it's because this is important. These are really consequential issues, and we need to make sure that we're getting these right. So we started building the network of people who have a lot of experience in politics. And then from there, world affairs and geopolitics, and partnering with a lot of the think tanks, which got us the breadth and depth that we needed. And then through our conversations with the big AI companies, mental health kept coming up. Is that a lot of teenagers are using these tools to ask difficult questions, especially around mental health. And you can imagine first the liability issues with that, but also how important the nuance and the tone of that is. It can't just be a step-by-step medical response. It has to really be able to speak to someone who may be in crisis. And so we started, we're working now with Cleveland Clinic and Mount Sinai in trying to address some of those questions, first in the evaluation piece, and then again, providing new content, as needed to try to fill some of those gaps.
And yeah, just to double click on the Cleveland Clinic example, because that's super interesting. Are they approaching you and saying, we use these tools internally and we want to get better answers for our doctors and patients? Or who is, where is their pressure point from?
So we reached out to them. For all our partners, we reached out to them. And for them, it's very much part of their mission to make sure accurate, good information is out there. And I think most of the think tanks feel the same way. They're generally nonprofits, and they want people to get this right.
Yeah.
And so they were excited by the opportunity because it gave their people a chance to show their stuff. They have been creating lots of content, intended to try to achieve that goal. And I think a lot of us see, that move toward whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Meta AI or Gemini, whatever you use, is sort of being the go-to for people in the future and wanting to make sure that they're present and that there's attribution there for these more reputable sources and that they're getting highlighted. And one of the big problems the LLMs have, it's not necessarily a shortage of information. It's just more, how do you find the signal in the noise?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to help them do, is like looking at the evals and doing like really nuanced labeling that can give them instructions for how to get to a better answer.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not a topic that you are at all a stranger to. Obviously, beyond being a renowned journalist, you were formerly at Meta as the head of news and the VP of media partnerships. From that experience, is there one core learning that you're bringing with you that you can kind of speak to about the way you should approach that conversation with the companies?
Yes, very much so. I mean, we tried so many things at Meta. Some worked, some didn't work. But from our fact-checking program to starting Facebook News and working more closely with news organizations, and like working through these issues and trying to get the balance right was really hard. And no one ever thought we did. I don't know if we did, but I'm not ready to stop trying.
Yeah.
So that was partly, inspiration for it. And then being at Meta just as AI started to really explode, and the company pivoting its focus to AI, and it becoming really clear to me that where this was headed in terms of being a source of information, and seeing both opportunity in that, and it being even more important that we get ahead of some of the problems that we had at Meta that we were trying to kind of clean up.
Yeah, I mean, and when we see the kinds of partnerships that already exist between tech companies, AI companies, and media businesses today, I think about the licensing deals. I think about those content partnerships. Is this meant to be complementary to that or competitive to that?
Complementary.
Okay.
I very much hope that this continues, bringing news partnerships to the table.
You want to see more of those?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, partly because news is struggling to find a business model. And I think those partnerships are pretty critical. But news organizations have a lot of bias, and how do you balance the content that you're getting from news organizations, and who has the expertise to look at that and ensure that when you're generating some AI output, that balance is there. I have no control over where these chatbots are ultimately going to go. My hope is that it is not the path of the filter bubble, where your whatever your AI of choice is gets to know you so well and only presents you with that one narrow perspective that it knows you want to hear. I'm not that way. I want to see lots of different points of view. I don't want my children to be that way. I want them to, learn from other people who disagree with them. So I want to at least try to have that present and accessible. And for the most part, it seems like the model companies are interested in having that too, which is just the broad, like I said, the depth and breadth of content that's out there.
No, it's a good thing to hear. And obviously you've raised some money, you've hired a team. I'm so excited to check in with you on this, hopefully a year from now, and hear more stories like this. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on
Thank
TNTV
you.
Campbell.
Thank you for having me.